there are a lot of people
Mhm.
who are questioning this narrative. I think it speaks to a lack of trust
Yeah,
in institutions like the
big
FBI.
time. I think Candace Owens has asked a lot of great questions, and I'm glad she has. I know others who behind the scenes are doing a lot of digging and asking all kinds of questions as well.
Marjorie Taylor Greene and Tim Dillon just revealed why Americans still don't trust the FBI, even after Trump has gotten into power, put as director Kash Patel, the guy that said he would shut down the Hoover building and turn it into a museum to the deep state. Is it Epstein? Is it Israel? Is it the Charlie Kirk investigation? Let's get their take on this. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
You do seem to have a real problem with transparency, and there's a huge loss of trust over
Mhm.
these Epstein files and over other things as well.
Yeah.
Um,
No, you're right. I'll tell you what, I track the calls coming into my office.
yeah,
Track them all. We track all the emails. We track all of it. This week, it was really interesting. 60% of my calls were about health insurance premiums costing too much. The other 40% Epstein files.
right, right.
So it's not going away.
You know, there and you see this in it manifesting in a lot of places.
Mhm.
Obviously, Charlie Kirk was tragically murdered.
Oh, it's awful.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This has been, I think, a wake up call for a lot of people about not only the divisions in the country, but watching people and the different reactions to it and how divided and how inhuman a lot of those reactions were
Right.
from people that were over the top celebrating this and
Yeah.
it's a young man, a father, and all these things. But there's also a lack of trust.
Yep.
There's a huge lack of trust in the FBI to conduct this investigation.
Mhm.
Um,
I'm seeing that. I
and
see that everywhere. Yeah.
and there are a lot of people that are questioning the narrative of what happened.
Yeah, certainly so. And isn't that telling when she said that half of her calls, even today, in her congressional office, are dealing with the Epstein files and Epstein revelations? If that doesn't tell you everything you need to know, I don't know what to say, because a lot of people were out there saying, well, this issue just doesn't matter that much to the American people. It clearly does matter, and it's indicative of a lot of the loss of support the Trump administration has had. Same with the Charlie Kirk investigation and the FBI's narrative into that. I think these two are striking the right chord here about why there isn't just this restoration of trust in the FBI. There's been too many cover-ups, too many Wacos, too many Ruby Ridges, too much COINTELPRO in the past, too much ruining Richard Jewell's life, too much Fed entrapment schemes for Americans to truly trust it, even if some of them think like the right men are in control of it now. And, it's hard to find a lot of Trump supporters that truly are completely pleased with this FBI, even Trump supporters.
I'm not an investigative journalist.
Mhm.
I don't have facts
Mhm.
on this, but I'm just telling you, and I'm sure you know this, on the right
Mhm.
and the left, but I'm talking primarily more so about in the world of the right.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people, Candace Owens being the most prominent,
Mhm.
who are questioning this narrative. I think it speaks to a lack of trust
Yeah.
in institutions like the
Big
FBI.
time. Yep.
So, two questions, two-part questions. Number one, you're privy to things we're not.
Mhm.
Do you feel like we know everything about what happened? And number two, why have these Trump appointed guys, Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, why have they not been able to restore some trust in
Mhm.
that institution? And
Right.
what do you think? The two-part question on those.
Well, I think they both went into those roles being flamethrowers,
Yeah,
having podcasts and done a lot of all type of interviews
yeah,
and all the statements they said before they got in those roles. And then just being an executive, having run a company, I do have a lot of compassion there. If you get thrown into that role with a presidential transition and all of a
yeah,
sudden you're the top guy and you've got to run the entire place, I, it's going to take a while to get in your groove, right? It just
sure.
is. I mean, that's natural for anybody.
I mean, that's pretty charitable if you ask me. Kash Patel was a high-level official within, I believe, the Defense Department for a time before this. And yeah, that's different than being the secretary of the director of the FBI. But still, I mean, you still can't engage in a cover-up. That's what I would say about the Epstein files and all the inconsistencies that were said about that. Pam Bondi is even worse in some ways than Patel, saying two different stories on what the film footage showed that they had taken out of Epstein's safe, and that the client list was on her table, apparently, reversing that and said, no, I just meant the case in its totality. So, you know, this is pretty charitable, and I don't blame Greene for this, but at the same time, you know, Americans have problems with this. It doesn't matter how fresh he was. If you engage in immoral acts, it doesn't matter how much experience you lacked or how much experience you have. I mean, that's something that should transcend your experience in a role, acting morally or engaging in a cover-up, and we're seeing the latter.
However, I do question, number one, like we said before, is the information there? And if it is there, do you have people you can rely on and trust to actually hand it to you?
Yeah.
Because it's not like Cash or Dan can go all around and dig through every file and look in every computer. They're not doing
No.
that themselves. They're relying on staff. So is
Yeah.
their staff
But
reliable
they
to do
also
that?
seem to be part of this strange gaslighting campaign of saying that, like, there's no evidence, there's never been any evidence, and there's
Right.
no story here, and nothing happened.
Well, it's coming. It's coming literally. Uh,
It's
basic
coming.
coming from the top, basically.
Do you believe?
Yeah, that's actually absolutely true. There is this gaslighting campaign and cover-up. Remember, it was a Democratic hoax at one point. At one point, it was boring. At one point, we have nothing, even though we know they have stuff. Ron Wyden's talked about the wire transfers that the Department of the Treasury is sitting on, $1.8 billion in wire transfers between Epstein and people of prominence that only his office and Marsha Blackburn's office, another U.S. senator, has sifted through. He wants the Senate to have subpoena power to get that, follow the money and seek the truth, but they won't do that. They'll say there's nothing there. We know that there's information withheld from the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. We know that there's information about Epstein's role as a federal informant, not only after his 2008 sweetheart deal, and that was part of the deal. Documents, revolving around that deal has showed that, and his role as an FBI informant at the end of the collapse of Towers Financial, who Epstein, it was involved in a Ponzi scheme with a partner in that organization named Stephen Hoffenberg. That we still haven't gotten clarity on. What is this? We just don't have answers, and it can't be the case that there's just nothing there, because then the Republicans under Mike Johnson wouldn't be blocking this attempt by Thomas Massie and Marjorie Taylor Greene and Ro Khanna to get the Epstein files. They stood there with actual victims of Epstein and said, we support Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massie's plan to unveil this information. But Mike Johnson and Trump are hell-bent and have whipped Republican votes against it. So yes, there is something there, and if there wasn't something there, they wouldn't do that. They wouldn't be able to do that.
Believe the official narrative of what happened to Charlie Kirk?
Oh my gosh, Charlie was a friend.
I know.
So I find this extremely sad. I think Candace Owens has asked a lot of great questions, and I'm glad she has. I know others who behind the scenes are doing a lot of digging and asking all kinds of questions as well.
I know high profile people that feel weird about it.
It's horrible. But she's being accused of people are accusing her, saying she's accusing Israel. I never heard her say that. Not once.
Candace seems to
She's
be doing something, when I grew up,
right.
when there was a crime, there was a massive amount of interest from
Yes.
the media in all of these things.
For sure.
Right?
Yeah.
I remember growing up and O.J. Simpson was on the news every single day.
Right.
Or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly the case. In this case, there's none of that intrigue about any kind of inconsistencies or broken pieces in this narrative. The Fed shifting on the narrative, on the gun assembly and disassembly. The focal point, I think, of people's curiosity should be George Zinn, this decoy that said, I shot him. And then later at the police department or the sheriff's department, I can't remember where they brought him, said, no, I just said that to help the real shooter get away. I mean, and this guy was released. He got a child porn charge after that because they saw his phone, apparently, and there were CP images on it. But this, it behooves the FBI to be a little more transparent. Now, whether or not you agree with the general FBI narrative on this, or who's culpable, maybe you think that there's an accomplice or a grander conspiracy, no matter what, people just aren't trusting this narrative. She's also right about Candace Owens and the fact that she hasn't said that Israel was responsible for this, but that is, the accuser's, declaration against her to try to shut this thing down, I think, if you ask me. Her investigation, and by the way, there's things in her investigation I don't agree with. I don't believe that this was a military operation. And I tend to doubt the narrative that Tyler Robinson was a patsy. I just don't see that yet. I see evidence pointing to him, even if there's inconsistencies in the narrative. Maybe there's more people involved, but she's right. It's been people like Nick Fuentes that has accused Candace Owens of saying that Israel did this when she never did such a thing.
Thomas Matthew Crooks, I don't know anything about him.
No, we know
I know
nothing
very
about
little
him.
about him.
No, nothing about him.
Tyler Robinson, maybe we'll know a lot more, but we're used to these weird things happening and then just going away.
Right, but you brought up O.J. Simpson, so here's what's funny. So by today's standard, we will have all said the glove didn't fit.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Back then, we were all like, bullshit.
Right.
We know the glove fit.
Right. Right.
But why today can't we call it out, right?
Where's the media
So
on
why
this?
can't we ask these questions? It's okay to ask these questions.
Right. Why is Candace Owens the only person asking these questions?
And why is she being criminalized and vilified for asking questions?
Well, she's not the only one. All sorts of people in dissidence on the internet are asking questions. She is the person of most prominence digging into the angles of this case, and she's breaking the internet with the popularity of her podcast right now. This week she's on a break, but I have no doubt she'll continue that streak next week. It's been more people than that, but at the same time, they're raising a good point. Like, hey, this is ignored by a lot of people right now, and the inconsistencies need to be explored. I think Tucker was right when he said, you need to show me how this guy got radicalized, because under the timelines now, it was something like in one semester, he suddenly became, enthralled with left-wing views and, started dating this guy that's transitioning, this Lance Twigg guy. That hasn't been unfurled very much, and maybe they're saving stuff till trial. They probably are. They're definitely sitting on evidence that we don't have, and, I guess we'll see it if it goes to trial. I tend not to think this will go to trial, but, yeah, I think they're making a good point regardless of what you think.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with it. I don't think there's anything wrong with what she's doing, but yet Mark Levin says that she's the worst person on the planet, and Ted Cruz thinks she's the worst person on the planet, and all kinds of people are coming out and trying to label her.
She lost her very close friend.
Mm-hmm.
She's going out and asking questions about his public assassination.
Nothing wrong with that.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Final
No.
question, and then we'll let you get back to Georgia, which must be nice to get out of here, right?
Yes. Oh, I love it. I leave every time we're not.
Do you ever go to Georgia and you leave DC and think, I miss Satan?
No.
Do you
Yeah, I don't think that she would be saying that. No one in their right mind would leave DC and say, hey, I miss Satan. Tim cracks me up. But listen, Candace Owens' crime in this whole thing is not really it's part of it, but it's not just questioning the FBI narrative and asking questions. It goes far beyond that. It's her revelation regarding what happened between the high-profile Zionist donors to Charlie's organization and what that pressure campaign was like. What that had Charlie Kirk saying 48 hours before his murder was when he said, verbatim, I have no choice but to leave the pro-Israel cause. For revealing that text message through a leak, that is what has put the crosshairs on Candace Owens. It's actually not just investigating this case. And sure, a lot of people would not want her to question the overall FBI narrative. That much is true. There's no doubt about that fact. But her biggest crime to the regime is revealing the truth about Zionist pressures on organizations like Charlie's, which, if you think about it, that's just a small microcosm microcosm of the Zionist pressures and the Israel lobby's pressures on our government itself, and why we have such a pro-Israel government at all times, no matter who gets into power, no matter who controls Congress, who holds control of the deep state, which there's an amazing and striking amount of continuity in the deep state and in our Congress in regard to the Israel first mentality. You know, if you want to think there's some grand clash of ideologies on Capitol Hill over foreign policy, especially as it pertains to Israel, you know, you have a lot to learn, if you ask me, and that's the truth. We know that's the truth, and you just have to look 2 days ago to how Trump talked about Miriam Adelson and, you know, how her loyalties are more in the direction of Israel than her own country, and how it's because of the Adelsons that Trump recognized the Golan Heights. Things like that. It just becomes too unavoidable, too glaring, and too hypocritical not to notice. More and more Americans are noticing. Candace Owens noticed that, and that's their crime. But look, yeah, of course no one trusts the FBI. Why would you trust the FBI? It can't be reformed. You put these guys in power, and they sounded great about bringing transparency to the Epstein case, and Kash Patel saying, hey, I'm going to shut down the Hoover building. That sounds great, but it never manifests into policy. Instead, you got a cover-up, and you don't have the shutdown of the Hoover building. You'll never get that under this treacherous FBI that entraps regular American dissidents, you know, in schemes to put them behind bars. I mean, it's only, you know, some people living today were living when Fred Hampton was killed by the FBI. The FBI is a treacherous organization. It has no place in a free society. If you want to enforce the law, yeah, under the Constitution, that's fine. Use federal marshals to do it. That's what they originally did. The FBI didn't even exist until the 20th century. You know, the Republic, you know, lasted for, you know, a century without this stupid organization, more than a century. And, you know, that's not to say everything was perfect in the early republic, but the laws were able to be enforced, and it didn't require this super police power in the form of the FBI, which really exists for squashing dissident thought, not enforcing the law. But what do you have to say? Let me know down below. Do you agree with Tim Dillon and Marjorie Taylor Greene? Why have people lost trust with the FBI? Will it ever be restored? And what's more at fault for that? The Epstein cover-up, the Charlie Kirk assassination investigation, Jan 6 entrapment. What do you think? Let me know down below. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel. Also subscribe to Tim Dillon. Love his podcast. He's great. And if you like this video and my commentary, please consider becoming a YouTube member by clicking the join button below. If you do that, you can help support the channel. That would mean the world to me, and I'd really appreciate it. So much so, in fact, that I'll give you access to all my videos before they go live to the general public on YouTube. And until I see you guys next time, no more war, no more debt, no more inflation, and no more empire. Peace out, guys. Catch you in the next one.